Welcome to the Roberts Law Office Injury Podcast. Kentucky attorney Jeff Roberts has over 25 years of experience. He'll provide answers to your questions related to personal injury and automobile accidents, workers' compensation claims, and Social Security disability benefits. Let's join Jeff for this episode. All right, friends, we are back in Calloway County with attorney Jeff Roberts, and today we are going to talk about road hazards. And this is probably a little bit more complicated than people think about, but there are several different types that Jeff's going to explain right here at the outset. Hey, Jeff, welcome back, guy.
Hi, Jim. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm looking forward to this one because there's a lot to this topic that I wouldn't have assumed, but as we prep for it, there's a little bit more to it. So I'm glad we've got you, given this information today. So let's jump into road hazards. And really, there are probably three different types that we're going to talk about today.
Three that when I think of road hazards that cause injuries, there's three things that kind of come to my mind, or three different types of situations that occur. One is like a defect in the construction of the road, and that's where the people who are actually being hired by the state to build the road or to reconfigure or to repair a road, if they create a hazardous condition, then the potential claim against them. Another is when the state itself is the one who creates the hazardous condition or creates a hazard. It could be it can be a barrier across the road or turn signals that aren't the way they should be. And we'll talk about these in more detail in a little bit. And then the final one that I think of is things that fall off of other vehicles.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So let's jump into this this design and this construction element. I mean, let's talk about that first then.
Where you see these type of claims is like when a road contractor comes in to repave a road. They'll come in and they'll maybe take off a layer of pavement, chip it out to some extent, and then come in and put a new layer on top. In where these cases come in is where they kind of don't go according to the contract that they have with the state. I've seen cases where for instance, where the drop off, the contract will say the drop off has to be at a certain height or below 5 inches or below or something of that nature to the drop off from the pavement to the shoulder of the road. And then when they get done with the project, it's an 8, 9, 10 inch drop off there. And clearly when you have that type of drop off, the problems caused by the driver, if the driver accidentally drops off, the chances of overcorrecting or not being able to get back up and causing a wreck is substantially greater in that situation. And so, those cases can be difficult cases to spot to start with, frankly, a lot of times because rarely do you see the police report say this was a huge drop off. It just says they dropped off the roadway and overcorrected or something of that nature. So you've got to get out to the scene and look at the scenes to see about these type of cases from that, and then get the contracts that they with the state to see what the requirements were to make sure that they to see whether they did or did not comply with those type of requirements. And if they didn't, then you've got the potential claim against the whoever that road construction company was that did that work.
And so that's not necessarily a claim against the county or the state or the federal if it were an interstate. This is against the road contractor itself, correct?
Exactly. It would be against the contractor that actually did the work in that regard, because they didn't do the work in compliance with the contract that they had agreed to do the work in. They didn't do it the way they were supposed to do that. They violated that contract from that standpoint. And in those cases, there could potentially be a claim against the state if the state approved that work, ultimately without seeing the error that was created or the breach of the contract, the hazard created. So there is the potential for a claim against the state, but there are some damage caps and some other offsets on that as a general rule makes that claim not the claim that you want to pursue, you pursue against the road contractor, who's the one that truly created the problem from that standpoint.
They were the negligent entity in that hazard.
Exactly. They were the one that was negligent, and the state was just, may have been negligent to the extent that they didn't see the hazard, but they're not the one who created the hazard.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then, so now let's transition a little bit into something that, we're probably familiar with, and I call this the pothole situation, but it's a lot more than that.
Correct.
But these are the things where you either have a local municipality, you've got a city municipality, you may have a state, or again, a federal municipality. But let's get into this. This is where really the state has responsibility for this.
It does. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the state has responsibility if you hit a pothole and it damages your car. That's not what we're talking about, what I'm talking about when I talk about a road hazard. But if you've driven down the interstates at times, you have seen, or even county roads and city roads, you'll see situations where they're doing some line work, they're running a line underneath, and so they'll dig up
Drainage pipe or something like that.
Drainage pipe, something like that. So they'll dig up one half of the road, like on a 2-lane road, or a 4-lane road, they'll dig up one lane, and kind of trench through that, and usually there will be cones or something like that up to mark that, and to let people know of that hazard, and they'll warn about that hazard. But if they fail to do that, and then somebody's driving down the road, and all of a sudden there's this huge drop-off that you don't see, you don't know is there because you're driving at nighttime and it's over a hill or whatever, then and you run into that ditch and it causes you injury, then that certainly can present a situation where the state has liability because they didn't warn you ahead of time. It may be something they are obligated or need to do, but they got to warn and protect against the hazard so people don't drive into that blind ditch, basically.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I've always wondered, why do I see road signs every so often that might say dip or bump ahead? And I guess that's part of it, is they want to make sure, hey, the surface is changing here a little bit. You need to be aware of it.
Yeah, exactly, to warn you ahead of time, because if you hit a dip or a bump, it can cause you to lose control of your vehicle if you're not expecting it from that.
Especially if you're on a motorcycle.
Yeah, yes, on a motorcycle can aggravate it from that standpoint. But I've seen seen cases where they've come in and cut all the way across the roadway.
Yeah, just trenched all the way across.
Trenched all the way across, and you had a 6-foot ditch, and they didn't have any warning signs.
Wow.
Whatsoever up anywhere about that, and guy come along in his truck at nighttime, got off work and driving down the road, and of course your headlights are showing, but you don't see the ditch, and he just drove right into a ditch and had injuries. That doesn't occur often, thankfully.
Yeah.
But you do see that occur, and when if the state or the county road department does that, it creates liability in regard to them. Other situations that you see or that I've seen is with signal lighting. If you've got a certain intersections, you don't want you want a protected left turn, and the requirements, the state requirements, could be that it's supposed to have a protected left turn. I've pursued claims against the estate over these situations successfully in the past where they didn't, it had a caution on, turn on green, use caution on green or whatever the sign says, on a left turn from one 4-lane highway onto another 4-lane highway. And there were so many accidents in that at that intersection because they did not have a protected left turn at that intersection that people were turning across oncoming traffic, turning left in front of oncoming traffic, and it caused a lot of accidents, and they didn't correct it until, actually, if my memory is correct, they didn't correct it until after we filed suit against the state over that.
Right. And so a protected left turn would be where they stop oncoming traffic. There's a red light, and then it's just a turning green light at that point.
Exactly.
It's not through traffic. It's an opportunity for oncoming traffic, and well, again, everybody to make left-hand turns.
Yes, the left when you have the left turn green arrow,
Yeah.
you're the only person, you or the ones on the other side making a left turn in the opposite direction of you,
Yeah.
have an arrow to turn as well. But the through traffic is stopped,
Right.
in all directions at that point in time. And those, you can. And there are requirements on when you have to have that protected left turn arrow there so that everybody else is stopped. And so you can have situations where the turn signals are not in compliance with what their own state guidelines are, for instance, and that can create liability for the state in that situation. And those cases are different than your regular car wreck or negligence case, because the state enjoys and county governments enjoy what's called sovereign immunity. Sovereign immunity basically says that they are immune from suit, except in situations where they've waived that immunity. And they have a limited waiver in these situations, but basically you have a special court, probably not the best word, but you've got a special process that you got to go to. It's not going to be in Callaway County Circuit Court even if the accident occurs in Callaway County. It's going to be in what's called the Claims Commission. It used to be Board of Claims. They've changed the name a few years ago to Claims Commission, and the case goes to that commission and is decided. Usually they have a hearing officer who will take the evidence, make a recommendation, and then the commission will vote on whether they agree with that. The max recovery was $350,000 the last time I pursued a claim. I have not seen any law changing that, so I'm pretty comfortable that it's still at $350,000. And then the other part is that really affects a lot of these cases is they get an offset for what other insurance is paid. So if your health insurance has paid your medical bills, you may not be able to recover those medical bills from that. If you settled a car wreck portion of the claim, you may not be able to recover. So there's $350,000. Once they offset those, that comes off that $350,000 as well. So
Whittles that down pretty quickly.
Whittles it down from that standpoint. So in the way it works, unfortunately, is the more seriously injured individuals tend to be the ones who lose all of that coverage, because health insurance may pay $350,000 in medical bills, and nobody's going to pursue a claim that's going to recover zero.
Right.
Ultimately, the net recovery is going to be zero once they take that offset, or even if it's a smaller amount, the cost of pursuing those claims can be significant in expert witness fees and things of that nature. So that can make those claims more difficult in not feasible to pursue.
Right. Well, in over your 30 years, I mean, a substantial part of your practice has been personal injury, automobile accidents, tractor trailer accidents, things like that. So I would imagine the bulk of those collisions probably occur in and around intersections. So you've probably been involved with a few of these.
Oh, yes. I've been involved in cases against the state in regard to these type of cases in the past. And, there have been some that just wasn't. I thought there was negligence on the state's part, but because of the way that is set up, it just wasn't going to be worthwhile for my client to pursue that claim. They were better off pursuing the claim against somebody else or the at-fault driver or whatever from that setting. And so you've got, but looking at the attorney that's handling your case needs to look at that, because that can be a potential other avenue of recovery for the injured party.
Well, which is fantastic, because a lot of this does come down to insurance. And if somebody's driving with limited insurance, or maybe the $25,000 current state minimum,
right,
and you've got a lot more damages than that, I mean, it's nice to know there's another bucket out there. And I hate to say bucket, but it's about kind of making you whole as possible. Not only for the property damage, but also for the medical damage and the other related.
Exactly. It's the aspect is to make sure that when you're injured through no fault of your own, because of someone else's negligence, they should be the one that is footing the bill for your medical bills, your lost wages, and your other damages. And it goes back, from my standpoint, it goes back to the way I was raised, and a lot of people was raised, and that is, if you're playing baseball and you hit the ball through a neighbor's window, you pay for that window. It's not, that you shouldn't have had a window in that location or anything of that nature. If you break it, you bought it. And that's the kind of the same process from my standpoint. It's personal responsibility. If you're the at-fault person, you should be the one responsible for that. And that's the same as if the state is one of the at-fault parties, they should be responsible as well.
No, that makes sense. And, when we first started this segment of the topic, talking about where the county or the state may have some overview, you said before we even started this episode, your very first lawsuit actually involved this kind of a situation, right? And because, again, in areas of motor vehicle, you also have handled a significant number of motorcycle accidents in Western Kentucky, and you've been an avid bike rider for many years.
I'm an avid bike rider.
Motorcycle
rider, yes. I've been an avid motorcycle rider for years. In fact, the first vehicle that I ever purchased was a motorcycle. And it wasn't really a lawsuit because suit was not filed in it, but the first claim I ever handled was a claim for myself, as you and I talked about before we went on, and that's, as you know, because you and I both went to the same university here at Murray State University, and at least when I went, Briggs and Stratton had a what was commonly called the student shift, which was an afternoon shift. You went in at 4 o'clock and worked at 10:30 or something of that nature. I can't remember exactly. But I worked at Briggs and Stratton for several years when I was at Murray State University and was going home one day on my motorcycle, and they'd done some work on one of the roads here in Murray that I would take, Olive Street, that I would take going home, where they had cut about a 4 or 5 inch trench in the road. Luckily, it wasn't any deeper than that, and had one of the barriers up in front of it, but there was no street lights on Olive Street then. There may be now, but there wasn't then. And the way this was, it was right over a rise in the road, a hill, and I was going home on my motorcycle, and next thing I know, there's a barrier in front of me because they didn't have any lights or anything else on it, and when my headlight hit it, I was way too close to be able to do anything other than lay my bike down, which I didn't want to do. So I ended up busting through it, and it did damage to my motorcycle. And so the city attorney and I had a little bit of back and forth, but ultimately they paid for the damage to my motorcycle. So I made the mistake of representing myself in the case, but I ended up getting the damage taken care of. So.
Outstanding. Well, so, this area of law, from your first case to now here we are 30 years later, I think you're safe to say you're an experienced attorney when it comes to these types of cases.
I have 30 years of experience now as an attorney handling these type of cases, and that's all in my private practice. I think I mentioned before, I've been an assistant county attorney for numerous years. And I still do some assistant county attorney work. The child neglect and child abuse cases in family court is all I do for them now. But in my private practice, which is where I spend the 90% of my work time, I limit my practice to personal injury. Some people can be a jack of all trades. I'm not one of those,
right,
so I limit my private practice to a certain area. Doing the personal injury, I do car wrecks, motorcycle wrecks, tractor trailer wrecks, work injuries, Social Security disability.
But it's all injury related.
Yeah, anything injury related, I do that. I do those type of cases. I don't do domestic relations. I don't do
bankruptcies.
Bankruptcy. I don't do
law.
property.
Yeah.
I don't do any of that kind of stuff. Don't do criminal defense. Or anything of that nature. I limit my practice because I think I can do a better service for my clients by doing that.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So when we started this conversation about road hazards, there were 3 categories, and we've talked about the first 2. So the last one is an item that may actually have fallen off of another vehicle, a tractor trailer or a delivery van, or off the top of somebody else's car or something like that. Let's talk about that as we close up the episode.
Okay, that is the situation where, like, if you're driving down the road and there is a pickup truck or a truck in front of you that's got something on the back end of it, and you're driving down the road, and the next thing you know, a wheelbarrow comes off the back of this thing. Hits you and causes you to go in the ditch and get injured, then that's kind of what we're talking about from that standpoint. And one of the biggest complicating factors in these cases is figuring out who dropped whatever item it is. And
it could be piping, it could be pieces of wood or lumber.
piping, pieces of wood. Unfortunately, not too long ago here in western Kentucky, there was an incident on I-24 where a truck was hauling manure, and manure spread out, and some motorcycles come upon that, and manure on the roadway and motorcycles are not going to mix, and there were several wrecks as a result of that. And so those type of things where another driver causes a substance or something to be on the road that shouldn't be there that can cause the wreck, finding out who's responsible is the biggest part of it. If it's something that falls off the back of the truck, the driver of the truck may not know
Exactly.
that it fell off. So
Tractor trailer doing 70 miles an hour down the highway.
Tractor trailer, dump truck, something like that, going down the highway, they may not realize. Tractor trailers hopefully have the doors
right
there,
well,
but if it's
flatbed.
a dump, flatbeds or something fall off of those, and so those fall off. The driver doesn't even know anything about it, so you don't find out who that driver is, and that can be complicating. If you know who dropped it and you can prove who dropped it, if they stopped to come out, police show up, and you got documentation. Okay, XYZ trucking company is the one who dropped this. It's a claim against XYZ trucking company and would be pursued as though that driver hit you pretty much to a large extent.
Right.
You just establish the negligence in not tying down the load like it should have been tied down. From there, if it is, if you can't establish who it is, who dropped whatever item it is, then you've got to look at your own insurance, and we've talked about that before. The uninsured motorist coverage, and you got to read your contract because some of them kind of require contact with the other vehicle.
Right, we talked about that specifically. You have to come into contact physically with the other vehicle. So
Exactly.
they graze you or they hit you and run off or whatever.
Yes.
Typical hit and run type situation.
Typical hit and run type situations from that standpoint, and you got to look at how the contract is worded. So if something falling off makes contact with your vehicle, some contracts are going to provide for that type of coverage, and you would still be able to get the uninsured motorist coverage in that. If it requires actual vehicle-to-vehicle contact, you may not be able to.
Maybe an exclusion.
It could be a little more difficult, at least, and a bigger fight to try to recover those damages from your own insurance in that sense.
I mean, and I'm amazed. I mean, I've ridden down the street and I've seen couches on the side of the road. I've seen mattresses. You see pieces of equipment, like you said, the wheelbarrow or something like that, paint buckets, all that kind of stuff. It's amazing what can fly out of an unsecured, back end of a truck or flatbed or even the back of a pickup truck.
Right.
But unfortunately, those drivers often aren't going to stop. To your point, maybe they didn't know. So now it's up to you and understanding the contract language in your own uninsured motorist. And I guess if they don't have coverage, if they've got that exclusion in that contract, there's not a lot that can be done. Is that right?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not going to be a lot that can be done then in that situation, and those are sad cases to sit down and talk to someone and say, I've looked at it. Unfortunately, I don't think there's coverage here. Now, a lot of times there is coverage, so don't think, well, okay, there's no sense in talking to a lawyer.
Right.
Definitely go talk to a lawyer. Let them get the policy. Let them read the policy. Make sure that whether there is or is not coverage in that setting, and then. If you're involved in one of these, look at what's in the roadway, because sometimes that can tell you, obviously get it out of the road, if you're where you can, or but the wheelbarrow or ladder or whatever it may have property of
Right.
XYZ company, and that will let you be able to track down who owns it at that point.
Could be a big box maybe, and it's got a shipping label of some sort on it. There's all sorts of evidence that can be found if you can get to it and preserve it.
Yes.
And then again, it just is this process of tracking it down. It doesn't always yield results, but it's a possibility.
It's certainly a possibility, and then when the police get there, make sure the police document that aspect of it as well. You document it, take pictures, for passengers or other people that stop, get pictures of what's in the roadway, get that documented, and make sure the police document, especially if there's something that, if the driver did not stop and there's something that's documenting who owned whatever it was in the roadway, make sure the police make note of that so that's showing up in that report, because when you go if we have to go forward with it, insurance companies are going to they're going to put a lot more weight on what the police officer says. Wheelbarrow had XYZ company on it. That they're less likely to argue. Okay, yeah, that was our wheelbarrow. So yeah, we have the responsibility. Well, we don't have responsibility because it wasn't our wheelbarrow. If it's in the police report, they're more likely to say, okay, yeah, we're going to go ahead and accept this.
Yeah, you got me. Yeah, that makes sense. And I want to come back to this real quick. If, again, people are worried about, well, nobody was around, I hit this item, I've got this exclusion, but if there's an injury, there's bodily injury there, they still may have PIP coverage, right? We've talked about this in previous, this personal injury protection. You want to talk about that?
No, they will have PIP coverage. Good. Yeah, they will have PIP coverage. If you're in the vehicle at the time of the collision, you've got that PIP coverage. It's going to cover your medical and lost wages up to $10,000. Other things it can cover as well, but that's usually what they're used for.
And that's you, and that's $10,000 potentially for any passenger.
Any passenger, and you can have more than $10,000 in coverage.
Yeah.
$10,000 is the minimum limits in Kentucky. You can purchase what's called added reparations or added PIP benefits, and so you may have more if you purchase that additional coverage. But if you're in a vehicle in Kentucky that's insured, you got a minimum of $10,000.
But that does not cover property damage. That's typically to cover medical bills.
Medical bills and or lost wages as a general rule. And you may have other coverages that could cover if you got comprehensive. On your thing, that may cover your property damage in that setting. So could be other coverages that would kick in as well, and that's another reason to go talk to an attorney because you can find that information out. So,
well, in this thing over the last 30 years, you've read a lot of these insurance policies. You know where to look. You know how to get to it fairly quickly, and what specific language either needs to be there or doesn't need to be there. To find out, hey, look, sometimes it's a matter of digging, and as you said, there could be another policy that might be able to provide some additional coverage, but a typical lay person like myself may not know.
Right.
And so, it doesn't cost you anything to pick up the phone and call you.
Exactly, and that's, I've had clients who've come in and thought I didn't have anything, they didn't have a case. Friend of theirs or family member said, go talk to Jeff. It's not going to cost you anything to come in and talk to him. He'll look at it, and if there's nothing there, he'll tell you. If there's something there, you can make a decision on that. And I've had those conversations with several people, and there's times I tell them, I don't think I can do anything for you, and there's other times I think we can do something on this.
Yeah, either way, you've got peace of mind, and you've got a good opinion there.
Exactly, and you've got an opinion from somebody. Whether it's me or another lawyer that does what I do, does personal injury work, you've got an opinion from somebody that knows the law at that point, and that's, the insurance companies always have somebody looking at it that knows the law, advising them in that regard. So it's good to get that, and even then, if I tell you don't have anything, you don't 5 years down the road think, I wish I had looked into that, because you have looked into it. And coming to talk to me on that initial consultation, there's no charge for that initial consultation. So you come in and I will sit down, look at it, and talk and explain it if it's area of what I do, and talk to you and tell you if it's something that you've got a case or don't have a case. So
that sounds good. Jeff, I appreciate your time. I know you're busy, and this has been one of those interesting subjects that really, I was just thinking maybe stuff in the road, but again, there are many facets to the topic of road hazards and where it may, present a problem, and in that other people could be, pursued for this. It's not just a negligent driver. It may be a government entity, which again is a different kind of case altogether, but I'm glad you've got a lot of experience in handling those types of cases.
Yeah, these cases can be challenging cases to pursue from that standpoint, because there are so many different facets that you have to look at, and many different individuals or different potential claims you got to look at for the individual to make sure that you're properly representing them. So they're they can be head scratchers at times, but that's what attorneys are getting paid for. So
outstanding. Well, Jeff, once again, thanks for your time, and friends, thanks for listening. We will be back in about 2 weeks. Take care. Jeff, thanks so much.
Thank you, Jim.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Roberts Law Office Injury Podcast. Jeff will return in 2 weeks. Until then, he invites you to visit jeffrobertslaw.com and follow his firm on Facebook. At the Roberts Law Office, you'll find a history of small town service and big city results.